Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dreamcatcher podcast, a place where your dreams can find a voice. While Buddhism is seen as a major global religion, Buddhist ideas, philosophies, and practice have long been a source of inspiration for people of other faiths. That's because it's more of a spiritual tradition that educates us on how to live well and to find inner peace. And today, I'm going to be speaking with one of the most knowledgeable people on the planet about Buddhism, Robert Thurman. Robert Thurman is a professor of Indo-Tibetan Buddhist studies at Columbia University, as well as co-founder and president of Tibet House US Menla, in service of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He was named by the New York Times the leading American expert on Tibetan Buddhism and was awarded the prestigious Padma Shri Award in 2020 for his help in recovering India's ancient Buddhist heritage. Time magazine chose him as one of the 25 most influential Americans in 1997. In this interview, we're going to be discussing some of the main concepts covered in Robert Thurman's new book, Wisdom is Bliss, 4 friendly fun facts that can change your life. He'll offer his insight into Buddhist principles such as Nirvana, karma, and the practice of mindfulness, and how we can apply them in our everyday life. If you like what you heard, please don't forget to like, rate, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Thanks.
Right.
Hello, Robert. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Celine. I'm so happy to see you, actually.
I'm happy to see you too. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's truly an honor to have you here with us today.
Well, that's awfully nice. I don't think it's an honor. Come on, it's just fun. It should be fun, though.
It should be fun. Yes. So
That's true. After all, the title of my new book, Wisdom is Bliss.
Exactly.
Have you read it? Did you have time to read it?
I did have a chance to read it. Yes,
wow.
I did.
I'm so excited about that.
Yes.
When someone has read it and then they ask questions and then I have to clarify or I see something, I've been learning from my own book by having someone ask question about it and then seeing things in a new way that I wrote, which is funny. I've gotten actually to like this book. Sometimes I've written books where I never am satisfied, but finally, the deadline comes, you have to let go. And then I think, I should have done the other or this, but this one I'm really liking.
Yeah. And it was a very clear framework that you used, which really made it easy for readers like me to understand. There were certain things that really, that I really resonated with, and I'm sure that listeners would really like to know more about. So,
yes, sure.
I want to start out by asking you about something that I heard you say in an interview. You said that your aim in writing this book was to make the core values and perspectives of Buddhism more accessible to people.
Yes,
could you tell us more about that and how you were able to accomplish that through this book?
Well, because I was focusing. Actually, my deeper aim, which I also say all the time about the book, is I feel that people are scared of reality in general. The Eastern, Western, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, whatever it is, the way that the teachings of the great founders, who I feel were enlightened beings, who were in touch with the deepest nature of reality, which was the compassion and love, whether they said of God or whether they said of reality, it doesn't matter, because it was basically that the deep energy of the universe, the life energy of the universe is love, actually. And that's what Buddha's message was and is and remains, and why he has been globally popular for so long as one of the 3 big global traditions, which I think share that message, actually, all 3. I think, what I say about the 3 big ones is that, Buddhism, historically, in historic sequence, about 500-600 years after each other, Buddhism, Christianity, and Islam are the 3 ones that sort of spread widely beyond a particular nation, beyond a particular sort of clan or nation, you could say. Hinduism is pretty big because India's population is so huge,
Mhm.
but sort of it's meant to only, they didn't really want to have other people be Hindus, other people were outside. Some modern thing, some modern teachers like Vedanta teachers, they think it's good to meditate, but you sort of have to be born Indian to be a Hindu, like you have to be born Jewish to be Jewish, and Chinese is Confucius, that's for Chinese. So,
Mhm.
but Buddhism, Christianity, and Islam sort of were universal in their appeal. And I think the true figure for each is about 1.5 billion. I think that people will say that Buddhism is only 700 million or something, but that's because China, they don't really allow people to register. You could say, because
Oh,
they're
they don't.
communists, because they're
Okay.
communists, right? So I
Yeah.
mean, there are people who say, well, I'm really Buddhist or I'm really Christian or I'm really Muslim in China, but in a way it's not allowed. And they're
Right.
cracking down nowadays in a bad way on like the Uyghurs, the terrible thing going on with the Uyghur Muslims,
Uh-huh.
and then the Tibetans and Mongolians have been suffering for their culture because China wants everyone to have just one culture, which is their communist Chinese culture.
Mhm.
Even they say they're 2,000 years of culture, but they were not communists. Only 50, 60 years they've been communists, And that's not really Chinese even. That comes from Karl Marx, So anyway, never mind. But my point is, yes. So I feel that, however, even though Christ and Buddha and Muhammad, may he be praised, may he be, Alhamdulillah,
Alhamdulillah.
even though the three of them were just teaching the love of the universe, basically, 2 out of 3 saying that's God, but on a basis of, well, God is love, Al-Rahim, Al-Rahim, in the case of Islam, and Saint John, God is love, and so. But then later, people organized these things. I think particularly political leaders, and they push the high priests into their way of seeing, and they push into sort of more scaring people, and people don't know, they're worried maybe God will send them to hell or something, or maybe they will, or that maybe reality really is some sort of horrible thing, and it's only a few of us little humans on the planet, like the way the materialists think, few of us little humans here, and there's no other human beings anywhere, any place, and then the animals all want to eat us, and the planet is blowing up, and it's not well designed, the planet, we have to fix it up and have parking lots instead of fields, So basically people are frightened and terrorized in order to make them manageable and obedient to political authorities. And so
they kind of weaponized
yeah, they
the
used
religion.
teachers who taught freedom and love of reality, and that reality loves you, so you can be secure to be loving in your life and not violent and domineering in your life. And they weaponized that to use it as a dominating thing. And so, and even people misunderstand Buddha's teaching as being that, oh, yeah, it's all suffering, so you just better get used to suffering. And well, maybe a few people can leave the world and go to Nirvana, which is outside some other place, It's like
Neverland.
beyond Alpha Centauri or something,
Yes.
In other words, which is completely wrong. Buddha, as Dalai Lama would say, Buddha would never have mentioned the prevalence of suffering for a self-centered person if it wasn't that a self-centered person can become other-centered and loving and altruistic, and then be really happy in this world, the way the world is, because Nirvana really is basically the doorway to Nirvana is everywhere in the world. Wherever you find love in the world, that's Nirvana.
And I'm sure that's a question you get asked very often, like, Norbert, how do I achieve Nirvana? How do I get there? You actually say in the book that the way to reach Nirvana is by facing reality. So
right.
I find that pretty interesting. Like, you've said a lot about it in the book, but I'd love to hear you say it here. Like, I mean, is facing reality the way, or
absolutely? In other words, even the Buddhists have the Tibetan Buddhists in particular, they have the famous so-called Tibetan Book of the Dead, with instructions for the after-death situation. And because from the beginning, even in India in Buddha's time, there were those who were like modern atheist materialists who pretended that they knew that we wouldn't exist at all after death. And so it was the easy solution. Just grit your teeth and let go, and then you'll just be unconscious, basically asleep permanently. And you'll never wake up again, and you won't know that you were ever awake, so you won't miss being awake. So in a way, they teaching a kind of fake nirvana of being anesthetized eternally, so nothing to fear, if you will, and also no consequence for how you behaved. You could be as nasty as you could be a nasty ruler, president or king or prime minister or sheikh, and totally torment your own people and enslave them, etc. And there would be no consequence to you for having acted so badly, and killed people and things, and without caring. And but of course that's fake, because it has been discovered by me, actually, as it was by Buddha, ancient time, that newsflash, there's no such thing as nothing. So it's not a place waiting for you, and no something ever can become nothing. And that's the law of reality, of relativity, So for them to have a blind faith that they're going to be nothing, these materialists, modern materialists, is much more crazy than faith in God or faith in any particular other thing, that at least somebody had, Moses talked to a burning bush, and Muhammad had dictation from Gabriel on orders from Allah, and so on and so on, So, he was a medium, a channel, as a prophet, So at least somebody was talking to them, so that means somebody's there, but nothing is not there. So to believe that you're going there is psychotic, actually. It's really bad. And that's, I think, why this modern technological culture, for all its marvels, which I appreciate, of course, the marvels. Even here we are talking like we're in the same room together.
I know, right?
Thousands of miles apart. I think that's just wonderful. And I personally love, I don't necessarily love all the way they manage it, the business Facebook, but I love the reality of Zoom and Facebook and whatever it is, that we kind of having to cope. A lot of people, I think, are threatened by it, but we're sort of coping with the global reality, so that we're related to everybody, who in ancient days, they were sort of aliens, like they weren't really human, like for a pink person, a Chinese was, and a yellow person was, there's no white people. That's one of my new theories. They're only pink people. So I'm sending letters to the white supremacists in America that they should change their name to pink supremacists, and that might calm them down. That's my theory. They're all pinks in search of a tan, type of thing. But anyway, I shouldn't digress, really. But anyway, I lose the track, So the thing is that what Buddha discovered is that the reality of life is nirvana, and what nirvana is not nothing. What it is an infinite life force, an infinite loving energy, love being sharing itself, giving itself to others. Is what love means. If you have happiness when you love someone, you want them to have the same happiness, And so love means, it's defined in ancient Sanskrit psychology, Indian psychology being the greatest on the world, really still, I think. It discovered that what love means is the wish for the beloved to be happy. It mixes with desire, and lust even. In our English use, eros does,
Yes.
And then we say eros and agape is sort of the selfless one in Greek, But actually, in a way, the selfishness, it just distorts the wish for happiness, where it's only my own happiness and therefore can be harmful to the beloved. And that's not the love as defined, But love as defined, including all forms of it, are basically altruistic in Buddha's view. And I think in Muhammad's and in Jesus, and actually in all the great prophets and saints in history. And because they sort of all went through a kind of dark night of the soul. They went through a very difficult period where they sort of faced and embraced death, you could say. Really, they did. All such great people. And then to their amazement, they discovered that death is not nothing. Death is not torture or torment. Death, once you're past, what it is where your own connection to the life force becomes too big for your body to manage. And that because you're too old or you're too sick or you had an accident that was broken in some way. And so your body can no longer be a viable channel for the basic energy of life, which is the place you fall when you die. So what happens, which they show in the book of so-called Book of the Dead, which is the wrong title. The real title is the Book of Natural Liberation or Natural Freedom.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
By learning about it in the between state, in the between death and rebirth state. That is to say, the after death, afterlife.
Yeah, because there is a book of the dead in ancient Egyptian culture. So I got a little bit mixed up when I read that in the book. I'm like, exactly. Are they related?
Yeah, well, in a way they're related because the Book of the Dead in Egypt, and who knows if that was the original Egyptian title, actually, because of course what it was showing was that the pharaohs and the sort of upper people who were sort of divinized in the Egyptian system, that they are not gone just because they left their body and they're in a boat on the Nile, eating halva, honey halva or something, they're having a good time. So actually they're not dead. So I admit that may not have been their title, actually. It may have been the Buddha, the book of the passage to the new life or to the eternal life or something. It might have been some book like that, because the Tibetan book is natural liberation by the nature of the reality, the natural liberation, by learning what is that thing in the between state. And the way they describe it is when you first really disconnect from the body is when you find that you are kind of like, you are in union, in communion at least, if not union, with an infinite life force, which is Allah al-Rahim in the Islamic terminology, is the merciful or loving God in the positive Christian terminology, and then that's Nirvana which is the essence of any divine loving being, as far as Buddha goes.
So is that a state of being in touch with that universal love that you're speaking about? Is that what Nirvana is essentially?
Yeah, it is. Nirvana is where you can embrace the vastness of that. So
the vastness.
The problem for the normal person who passes out of the body, because the body can't handle the force of the loving plenum, the plenitude of energy that exists in the universe for anyone to get whatever they need from, like a wish-fulfilling jewel, but people can't handle because they're used to being in a limited embodiment, and then they're beyond the guardian wall, or beyond this, there's germs, micro dangers, there's macro dangers, lions and tigers and enemies and so on. And so there's all this, and time is a kind of danger because then they grow old or they get sick. So they're used to worrying about being too expanded or too open. And what this is a state of complete openness, because the loving universe is open to whatever anybody needs.
So it's a state of consciousness, because, okay, I've heard that some people can reach this state apparently by taking certain drugs, and I'm not advocating the use of drugs, but a lot of people think, like the hippies and stuff, that you can reach that Nirvana-like state when you are in an altered state of consciousness. Well, so I just want to clarify,
Sure, I'm happy to clarify it. In a way, yes and no is the idea. The yes part of it is that some of those, especially what are called the psychedelic.
Psychedelic, that's it.
Or there was a great term coined by a religion professor in America called Houston Smith. He called them entheogenic, in other words, generating a divine kind of awareness. But nobody responsible anyway ever claimed that you would actually be able to reach nirvana just by chemical change. However, what does happen is one's normal conceptual framework, where one has been frightened by authorities into feeling that reality is very dangerous, and so you have to be very closed up and very armored, and you can't be open to people, because you have to just look out for yourself because it's too dangerous and people are really bad and all this. They have to be controlled by police. And that whole conceptual structure, which everyone tends to be brainwashed by in their culture. From childhood, not necessarily by a fascist regime, but from childhood, because of the distortion of the teachings of the great founders. And what can happen with those chemicals or plants, which the tribal people have used since day and time.
Yes, they have. Yeah, I've heard.
You know, that temporarily gets shattered. And so you kind of face the world without presupposition. And then what happens is people see, gee whiz, that flower that I used to say, when I looked at it, that rose, oh yeah, that's a rose. And then I looked away to the next thing because I labeled it and bam, it was captured by my concept. And then I paid no attention to it. So when my concept doesn't work and I'm sort of staring at the rose, oh, there's all kinds of other dimensions in that rose. The beauty of it suddenly, which is like a poet's view where it's sort of indescribable beauty, will sort of hit a person, usually. Sometimes some people who are unguided will actually get even more scared than usual, actually, because when they think they can't recognize things, they think of them some really bad thing will happen to them. If they're particularly self-centered and very paranoid, they will have a terrible time unless they're guided well, you know, and encouraged not to, to feel safe. Do you know what I mean? So in that sense, it can open a door that can make one think maybe there is such a thing as another way of being that is totally enlightened and open, which is a more beautiful way of being and more loving and more altruistic and therefore more receptive, and people like it more popular, et cetera, you know, because you're loving and kind to others and you're empathetic with them and you're other regarding to them. And so the idea is that it can be the useful of, by shattering temporarily the normal habitual way of seeing, where there's no nirvana, you know, like there's no such thing.
Like the ego, does the ego get dissolved,
yes,
and do you lose those mental
suspended.
constructs?
But the ego is still there. It doesn't destroy the ego. And actually enlightenment doesn't destroy it either. It just makes the ego a little more secure, where it doesn't need to feel it dominate and control everything because it's so scared of everything. In other words, a kind of neurotic self-centeredness that is always very crippling to a person. As you know, people who are highly self-centered, they are among the most unhappy people that you know, because they're always evaluating what's ever happening to them by saying, is this really, is this for me? Is it enough for me? Do I have enough, or could I have it better?
Don't they call that the hungry ghosts?
They do. Extreme level. Well, that's a non-human way of being. So human can almost, because see, the key thing about humans from Buddhist zoology, you could say, because I'm presenting Buddha as a scientist more than a prophet, you know, because he's challenging the way that Hinduism, which was a theistic religion of its own way, you know, Hinduism was structuring the world to make people scared and dominatable, you know, in the caste system and so on, you know, and put in their place. And so the king could manage them without them demanding too much freedom, you know, and that's what the world was. So Buddha challenged that with facts, with reality, with science, you know, with the direct experience, you know, not just with some theory, you know. And science of mind, you could say science of soul science or spiritual science, just as the great Sufis like Ibn Arabi and these kind of people, you know, Attar, you know, Rabia of Basra,
Rumi.
you know, yeah, Rumi, yes. This is just as they did. They were people who had experience of, they sort of really entered through the Quran and through the Prophet, alhamdulillah. They entered the reality that in fact he was inspired by, you know, which they call Allah, you know, which I don't know Arabic, but I do know that La is a different pronunciation, is a negation. Actually,
it means no. La literally means no.
It means no. So although Allah means God, but in a way you could read Allah al, which is like the no.
Yes.
You could read it like that. So la ilaha illallah, you know, la thing is a negation, you know, Allah, the no. But I know it's pronounced in a different way and so on. So I'm not making any kind of, you know, a sacrilegious thing. But that's beautiful in a way. And it is the ancient Judaic thing that Muhammad was aligned with, you know, which is that the Judaic thing being that you can't pronounce the name of the divine because it's so much bigger than anything you can conceive. And when a human being names something, then they think they own it and they can control it. You know what I mean? Rather than they have to give themselves and open themselves to the force of it, and just be one with it through faith. Do you know what I'm saying? Which is like a Buddhist meditation of reaching openness, freedom, and realizing the loving freedom of the universe, But anyway, so which they can call, they have a godlike word for that, but they can also just call it reality, So they're not stuck on any particular word. And therefore, it fits very well with the Judaic, the Abrahamic, let's call it, traditions, if properly understood, and not manipulated by warlords to make people feel that I can fight because God enables me to kill these people. That's really not cool. It's time in history, I think, to really more openly, rather than just some secret people, some hidden Sufi or some hidden Imam someplace or some hidden somebody, because the authorities are not going to tolerate anyone who teaches freedom and openness and generosity and love and not violent domination. The authorities never want that. They want their armies, they want their conquests, and they want their, and also the patriarchy wants to dominate the women, and who are the more peaceful one among the humans, and so it's time where these hidden mystic, what are called mystic, as you know, mystic only means in Greek, mystikos only means hidden. It doesn't mean it's some weird thing that's irrational. It's actually more rational and more experiential than the contorted thing of making the beauty of this planet and of reality and of this incredible creation that we live in, making it something frightening where we have to burn oil all the time and we have to make concrete, get rid of all the plants which might infect us. As they meanwhile, the plants are giving us energy, oxygen, and so we're, in fact, therefore we're destroying it by being scared of it.
Yeah, I mean, Robert, in a world, which has become increasingly materialistic and there's been more focus on the self, how can people, move towards kindness and engaging in acts of altruism? How can the teachings from Buddhism help people get into that kind of?
If they're seen, see, that's my point. But if they're seen as from Buddhism, they will not reach a lot of people, because immediately the category will be, oh, that's a weird religion of some other people. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
My religion is something other than that. So that will not reach. And there's no need to. Like the Dalai Lama, when he comes to the West or Europe or Japan or anywhere, or even in India, which is really a predominantly Hindu Muslim country. My point is, when he goes to any other place like that, he says, it's too late in history to go around acting like we have the sole and only truth, and everybody else has to be like us and they have to adopt our slogans and our credos. And instead of that, learn from each other what we know about the soul, about the mind, about the heart, not just the brain, and even embrace the atheists, actually, who...
I was just going to say, those who don't believe we have a soul.
He considers the fourth 1.5 billion religion on the planet to be the atheists. And that's a religion. And, the communists, Marx, oh, yeah, we better not... And because, in a way, they're reacting against the corporate behavior of the religions, by saying that, in a way, but they're not really facing up to the fact that they are acting corporate and like fanatics, like a religion of atheism. In other words, their ideology is a kind of religion, for sure, and they'll kill for it.
I actually had the opportunity to interview a humanist, and it was interesting to hear his take on it, and that really they too, the roots of humanism is altruism and doing good in the world, even though they don't have a belief in divinity and things like that. So I thought that was interesting. Yeah,
exactly. And I don't blame them in their Western enlightenment, which I think is very similar to the Buddhist one. The Buddha's one. I should say not Buddhist. Buddha. Actually, when Buddha had it, there were no Buddhists. He was just teaching people. There was no such thing as Buddhism. And he was rebelling against the domineering aspect in Vedism at the time. And I don't blame them for dropping God in Europe in that 18th century time, 17th century, etc., because what God was behaving like to them, as interpreted by the Inquisition type of thing, was really suppressive, horrible. Like burning at the stake, Giordano Bruno. Silencing Galileo. You can't look and see what you see in front of you, because you have to adopt some slogan that if you don't repeat, we kill you. And so to stop being afraid, they came up with this fake out, which is you just won't exist. So So
it was a reaction. It was a reaction to the oppressive measures.
The point is, no one can torture you if you're just nothing, right? Whereas in hell, Dante's hell, even purgatory, you're getting tortured or whatever. Although, as long as there was purgatory, there was some hope. And some of them don't allow even purgatory. We can't afford that on the planet now.
We really can't.
We have to all get back to what the original teachers taught. And we have to actually see, love your enemy as scientifically more valuable. Why is that actually not an unrealistic thing? Why is it realistic is the point. Well, why is your enemy an enemy? Because your enemy is unhappy.
Because they did something wrong?
They think that you're in the way of their happiness. So if they get rid of you, they will be happy. Actually, they discover once they get rid of you that it doesn't make them happy. Then they have to find someone else to get rid of. So it makes them more unhappy, actually, because they got rid of you. And you might have been able to tell them a joke or something, which they didn't have a chance to listen to because they killed you. And so, but if you love the enemy, meaning wish the enemy to be happy, and if the enemy gets really happy, why are they going to bother to chase around after you? Do you know what I mean? They're going to have a good life.
What if we're talking about murderers or like someone like Hitler?
Well, Hitler was just frustrated because he wanted to get into the famous art school in Munich because he wanted to be an artist, and they kicked him out. And then he went off to the war, and he got paranoid.
He still killed a lot of innocent people. So in such situations, how can people find it in their heart to forgive?
Well, in the case of Hitler, my point is, Gandhi outraged Churchill when he went to England in the 30s. And he said, guys, you have to resist Hitler nonviolently. And that will then give you
I read about that.
Thing, right? And then Churchill was outraged, and the English press got all excited. And then they said, how can you be like that? You mean just surrender to him? He says, no. Resisting nonviolently means that you don't cooperate with him and his people, but you don't violently attack him back. And the point is that takes huge courage, because he's going to kill a bunch of you. Before that, his own troops stop obeying his insane orders, because they realize there is no enemy out here trying to attack us. They are standing there saying, look, we'll be happy to get along with you. We like Mozart and Beethoven, and we like German cooking and schnoogles and kugels. We like that, but we're not going to fight with you. And your guy who's telling you to fight with us is crazy, and you shouldn't get your life ruined like that. You know what I'm saying? And then they're going to kill a bunch of you. Sure. But then how many million are they going to kill when you fight? That they're going to kill. And furthermore, so my recommendation is, if you had the ability and the understanding to give your life without violence, then to be willing to, then you won't give as many lives, I predict, and you will also change Germany very much more quickly without destroying it. And Hitler will be, voted out by his own people, or marched out, or whatever it is, however they have to get rid of him. And he will, he only is in there by pumping up their fear. He was like Trumpist, but just the same. He read Mein Kampf as a child. His father was a Nazi. And they try to use immigration and anti-women stuff to pump up fear. It's a method. And if they have media to brainwash people, they succeed. Mm-hmm. And Germany was impoverished by a bad treaty put up at the end of World War I, where Clemenceau and Lloyd George broke Wilson's promise to the Kaiser that they would be merciful with an honorable peace. And instead they ripped them off, and they ripped Germany's economy off totally. So they were really impoverished badly. And then that fear thing will take among the population. And we're seeing it. We were having a near miss here in the US just now. Right now, it's a near miss. We're at a near miss. Fortunately, we're in a miss, but it's near. That's still going on. So my point is that was quite brilliant, actually, and it was actually practical. And there are people who are aware of that. And after all, haven't we really? Who's won a war lately? Anybody who's won any wars lately? No, it's not only Afghanistan, Vietnam, wherever it is. And maybe the Israelis think they won something because they have their wall and they have like their nukes and all this stuff. But what do they want? Everybody hates them.
Yeah, I think it depends, Robert, on how you define winning. Like people, they interpret the word winning in different ways.
Yeah, well, they do. There's a short-term winning, and there's
a short-term win. Yes.
Yeah, but now
at another person's expense.
What the mother, what Mrs. God is telling us, Mother Earth, is that our short-term way of living is unsustainable, and we're all going to be our very nest, our planet, our home, will be uninhabitable in a short time, and that's why Jeff Bezos and Branson and these guys, they're heading for Mars. They've given up.
Plan B.
They're smart enough as scientific and economically to recognize that the way we're going is where Greta Thunberg says we're going. She is a prophet just now, correct one. And she says, you are destroying your own future and our future, especially we younger people. And so it's become evident war is no longer viable. And it doesn't take Gandhi or Buddhism or anybody. Nobody wins them. And furthermore, when people live in a militaristic way in their internal society, and then they'll be in a police state inevitably, because the mothers will not want to give their sons to stupid, useless wars that nobody wins. But they'll have to be coerced to do it. And then that means the quality of life that you won sucks. And furthermore, it's short term because you're depleting the soil, you're poisoning the air, polluting the water. It can't be managed, And
that has karmic consequences, right? When you do such things.
Yeah. Yeah, but karma just means causality. Do you know what I mean? Karma is not a mystical force in the reality. It's just causality. It's like you're digging your own grave.
Pretty much, yes.
When you try to say, I'm winning because I have like 100 generators and 5,000 barrels of oil here, and I have guns and I have booby traps and mines all around my land, etc. Nobody can come, and I've got like 100 years worth of food. Of course, I'll only live another 20. And then I think foolishly I'll be nothing. But actually, that's all unviable, Anyway, so if we look scientifically, but let's come down just to a more simple thing, what's called the equal exchange of self and other. When are you happy in life? When you're happy, like whatever, I don't know what religion is your religion, but I'm
born Hindu, but I call myself spiritual.
Right. Well. Yeah. Hindu has its own Christmases, right? It has Holi, it has whatever, it has where people throw color lights on each other, or Diwali. They have like where they give gifts to each other, right?
That's right.
Every culture has Hanukkah for the Jews, and then Eid, I guess, for the Muslims. And
the Chinese New Year for Taoism?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So everybody has Christmas, right? But everybody knows in every family, when you get a gift, the smart people in your family give you the receipt so you can exchange it if you're not satisfied.
Isn't that against gift-giving etiquette?
Well, a little, but when families say, well, they don't give it, but they mention, by the way, if it doesn't work, doesn't fit, if it doesn't fit or whatever, you can exchange. I kept a receipt, you can exchange. So the only people who really love what they get are the kids who are not thinking to compare it. And they're just thrilled to have it. And it's just amazing. And then they really hug you. Oh, thank you so much. And they don't, unless they've been watching a commercial about a better toy too much, if their parents don't.
I was just going to say, if they had something specific in mind, and they'd be disappointed they get something else.
And then you find out. And my point is, so when is it that you stop being happy? Is when you stop to think, how happy am I? In other words, when you evaluate your own situation, you're always dissatisfied.
And when you're always comparing yourself, keeping up with the Joneses, as they say.
Exactly. Then look at the divorce rate in the secular cultures.
Yes.
It's huge. It's like
very
practically,
high.
it's just like a party, the marriage that it met last. You can count on it. And so I perform them sometimes, so I know that. And then when you are kind to another, when another person lights up because you help, if you're a doctor and you really succeed and the patient is healed and they're happy, that doctor is really happy for that moment, So in fact, if you sort of, there's a special method, meditational method, but which is also just, not a sitting thing of being in some isolated place. It can be helped by meditating. Education is a kind of meditation itself, right? And unfortunately, watching Fox News is a kind of meditation, which then makes you afraid and freaked out and angry. This kind of hate monger people on the TV.
Right. Yeah. You take that in, and that can just make you so bitter, and you see the world as such a dangerous place. Yeah.
You watch this stuff 14 hours a day because you have Fox News on with its propaganda thing. Goebbels, Hitler would still be in power if they had such a mechanism,
It's a kind of hypnosis. It's a kind of hypnosis, isn't it?
Yes, it's a kind of hypnosis. So, but my point is, if you're right away from the beginning, you spend your time thinking more about what other people want and need in any situation, and less about what you want and need, then you'll automatically be more satisfied with whatever you have because you won't be evaluating it. Instead, you'll be thinking, oh, they need that. Well, wouldn't it be nice if I could do this and the other? And I think this is a harder practice for males because actually females normally do that more. Like the mother in the family does sort of think about dog needs to be fed, baby needs to bath, so-and-so has this problem, that problem. They more look at what the other people need more, actually. And of course, some people will think that means they're supposed to be martyrs, but isn't. That's why families hang together a little bit, because of women. When one of my earlier books, Inner Revolution, that I wrote, coming up, this is kind of a culminating thing now. I'm 80, published on my 80th birthday. Wisdom is bliss. It's like
belated happy birthday.
But the earlier one was called Inner Revolution. And then I had a concept there of the cool hero, cool heroism, not hot heroism, based on the idea that we all agree that someone will be ready even to give their life pumped up on hatred in a military, hatred of the enemy. I've got to save my country, you know what I mean? So I'll charge this machine gun nest, like Sergeant York in World War I, all those poor people were I see running into each other's machine gun nests, for no reason at all, except the lords were just pissed off with each other, the kings, whatever, who were relatives, actually, ridiculous. And, Cousin Willie, the German Kaiser was just misbehaving, and his relatives in England were mad. And so it was ridiculous, the whole thing. But the people were the cannon fodder, right? So my point is that in that book, then someone said, well, where's all the cool heroes? You mean just Gandhi, just Jesus, just Buddha, just somebody? And then for a minute, I was stuck almost. And then I just thought of a family scene in my house, either my birth family or even the present one. When the brothers, I didn't have a sister, I had two brothers. And we have three boys in our family, but we do unfortunately have one daughter. But anyway, when the brothers are about to kill each other, practically, they're really angry, they'll practically come to blows. Or father and son can, they can get really fierce, shouting and saying mean things to each other. Who is the one who gets in the middle and says, no, dear, don't say that, you don't mean that. No, you mustn't hate each other. No, and often gets hit in between. Who is
the mother?
The mother, exactly.
Yeah, that was certainly the case in my household.
So therefore, then I was able to say, because that popped in my mind, I said to that interviewer, I said, the cool heroes are half of humanity, actually. And that's the only reason that families hang together and the male militarized football playing, punch and shove, educated.
So it's that feminine energy, right, that they exude. That, yeah.
Well, but it's actually in feminine. It's not only energy; it's the feminine intelligence.
Yes.
Of seeing the bigger picture, and not getting stuck in the immediate mood and the freak out and the emotional imbalances.
Yes. And that's something that Buddhism teaches. That's something that Buddhism teaches, right? To be mindful of your thoughts and your feelings.
So therefore, the male has to figure out how to pump a little more oxytocin in their nervous system and a little less cortisol and adrenal surge of like aggression, and look at the world in a more careful way. And the patriarchality of all the societies have to temper that patriarchality with the good side of the patriarch of feeding the people, helping them, protecting them, being kind to them, appreciating them, and listening to them even. I know well about it because I've been slowly educated over the years.
I actually wanted to ask you about something. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, I know you're close friends with him, and one of his main teachings that I really resonate with is the importance of educating the mind and the heart. And he says he hopes to see schools and society focus more on inducing this heart-centered form of intelligence. And do you think that is the way to kind of get around that issue of bringing in?
I totally agree with him. Therefore, although maybe, in one way people could say, since I was a Buddhist monk ordained by him against my
you were one of the first ones, right? First Westerners.
But then I don't really like to be introduced like that, because then I have to say, and now I'm the first ex-monk. Because I did resign. My original older teacher, who had lived in America for already by that time about 10 years and knew the culture, he said, you are not born to be a monk. I know you want to be, and the monk thing in Buddhism is not like the Christian monk thing. It's more of an educational thing. It's like a way of having a lifelong scholarship in a country, because they'll give you a free lunch forever, and then you're supposed to study and develop yourself. So you educate yourself lifelong. It's like a way of having a lifelong scholarship. And it isn't so much you're going to be holy or whatever, do you know what I mean? And just withdraw from society. The monks are very engaged in society, and they were really called mendicants, and meaning they live on alms so that they don't add to the production in the society.
And that kind of lifestyle really appealed to you, but at the time.
Because I needed the scholarship, because I was so thrilled at studying the Buddhist science. The science of how the mind works, the science of the heart, how to really get to, develop the good side of the heart and get rid of.
And how old were you? How old were you when this happened?
20.
But
they wouldn't ordain me until I was 24, because as I said, my original older teacher, my Karate Kid teacher, you could say, the old Mongolian monk, Tibetan Buddhist monk, but from Mongolian background, who lived in the US since the 50s, and who knew the culture, and he knew me. He was amazing. He was clairvoyant about me, and he knew I might have been a monk in many former lives in Tibet or in a country or in Mongolia, a country where that was an open, viable profession, a vocation. But it wasn't really, it's not that in America. There are some Catholic monks, but this is a different kind of monk. And Catholic monks are really just barely tolerated in a Protestant ethic country, because everybody has to be productive in Protestant ethic, right? You can't purify yourself. You just throw yourself on the mercy of God because you're a sinner to start with, Calvin and Luther, So they didn't support monasteries, basically. There are a few, and sort of exceptional ones, but they don't believe in that. And therefore you have these Catholic monasteries like where Thomas Merton was, 5,000 acres and 16 buildings and 15 monks, or 25 maybe, because it's just not a possibility in this culture. So they made me wait 3 or 4 years. And then only in a couple more years after that, I realized civil rights movement was going on. The stupid and asinine, ridiculous Vietnam War was going on. My people and my peers were challenging those things. And I wanted to And my teacher said, no, you can't do that if you're a mendicant, because a Buddhist can't interfere in American politics, because it's not part of the American thing. So you have to either go out and do that if you feel that you have to, but you can't do that while being a monk in a monastery here. So then I did have to resign, to be more activist, and that was because that's what I wanted. But then I realized the way to keep learning as I wanted would be become a professor, and then I could study and teach. And then you have to keep studying when you teach, or you're a dead teacher. And so therefore, I was able to, it's sort of like the monastery, the university, although I was lucky, I found a new teacher in my wife, who has been my guru of the last 55 years,
Wow.
54 years. And I learned so much.
Relationship goals.
It is really wonderful. And all thanks to her, probably I would have lost it, because I had a lot to learn, and I have slowly learned most of it, and I'm fairly happy now. So that's the thing, right? So back on that point, therefore, it's a way of being more happy right now is to be more altruistic and compassionate. And especially in order to understand that, I harp on that a lot here. You have to understand that being compassionate doesn't mean being namby-pamby and saying to people, oh, come and beat me up, and being a martyr. On the contrary, if you're really empathetic with other people, if you run into a local Hitler, neighborhood Hitler or something, then you can be quite tough with them as a compassionate. And actually you can be more effective in it, like martial arts thing, because they can sense that you don't actually even though they're bad and they know they're bad, you don't hate them. You're opposing them, and you can oppose them with intelligence, with humor, with force, because you're knotted up inside by hating and being angry. When you hate and anger, you're knotted up inside, and your judgment is very bad what to do. You don't think of anything good to do. You just kind of do the same, banging your head against the wall. You don't know what to do. But if you're cool, you can figure out how to maneuver around a bad person, and they can sense when you don't actually hate them. You just want to stop what they're doing. And therefore, there's a possibility they might, swerve and go after somebody else, or you might let you escape, or whatever it is. If that's it, sometimes
kind of like an animal, right? They can sense when you are not you're not a source of threat to them, right? They can feel that on an instinctual level. So it's similar, right, with human beings.
Absolutely, sure. When we all sense, we're all animals, and we all sense.
We are animals.
Clairvoyant. We're 100% clairvoyant. We sense what the other person, how they really are feeling and whatever. And that's because the heart senses that. The mind might not, although can be trained to. One of Dalai Lama's friends is that guy called Eckhart, not Eckhart, but Eckhart. And he can read on the faces of people, little muscular movements.
Yes, I've heard about that. Yes.
And he can read, he's like a living lie detector. He can read people's emotions from the face. And therefore, he got to really like the Dalai Lama, because he said he never met someone who was so open in the way, and by their facial expression. There was no guarding. He was just where he was. He was just right there, And there was the very relaxed face. He was amazed about it. No kind of tension in the ear or the jaw muscle there or other places.
Almost like the Buddha, actually.
I don't have that awareness, but our subliminally we do. It's like, and also women do. Women know on a blind date in 5 minutes whether it's going to work out or not. But they're socialized to be polite and to be self-sacrificing. So they'll sit through a boring conversation and a long dinner and hope the food is not too bad, and then sort of have a headache when they want to go home.
And they also live in the illusion. They project that fantasy that they have. So that's something that Buddhism talks about too, living in our illusions. And that's what gets in the way.
Their own intuition.
Right.
They will override their conceptual framework that they've been indoctrinated in, will cause them to override what they actually know from the heart right away. And save themselves so much trouble. They could save themselves a failed marriage or two. There. For example, if they were really followed that intuition, So anyway, so that's the thing. So it's actually more practical ultimately on a small plane interpersonally. It's more practical on a huge plane because militaristic place and police states suck. And look at this life in the European Union. Those people are really happy, and it doesn't matter what you call it. They're plenty capitalist. They're not particularly socialist, but there's some sort of aspect of taking care of. It's like a New Deal goes on there,
Yes.
and they, free healthcare, perfectly good healthcare. I was examined for a little piece of melanoma on my forehead by a lady who's a friend of a friend. I wasn't even a resident. Didn't cost me a thing. She gave me a thing. I put it on there, got off. Just she gets paid by the state.
Where was this?
France, Paris.
Oh, France. Okay. Because I know they have that in Scandinavia. I lived in Sweden for a while. And
this was in France. And I know people here who know that and have gone south of France and had operations that here they were bankrupting them. And then rents are reasonable mostly. And then their taxes are not that high. Gas is expensive, but then they make nice gas sensible cars, and they're going to go totally electric very fast now. BMW, they're building huge electric factories. And Tesla is building a factory in Berlin, himself. Elon, my hero, Elon. And actually, the other word I've recently liked, a friend of mine, a Nicaraguan lady, who helps a lot of women in refugee communities, migrant communities where they've been, the whole family had to leave someplace, and she has the word shiro. I really like that word.
Shiro. I think Maya Angelou coined that word, actually.
Oh, really? Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell. I thought my Nicaraguan friend thinks she coined it, and I'm sure she wouldn't misrepresent. She would give attribution. She's a journalist. I'm sure she would if she knew that. Good. Yeah, that happened to me. I coined a term called psychonaut instead of astronaut.
Yes.
For the Indian inner science, which is not particularly Buddhist or Hindu, it's Jain, and the Sufis actually. It's the early Sufi. Al-Sindi is an early Sufi in India, from India, came from India, and I thought I coined psychonaut, and then I found, a year or two later after I was going around, I coined psychonaut. That Stanislaus Grof, a psychiatrist who came from Czechoslovakia and lives in California, he has it in one of his books before I thought of it. But I hadn't read that book.
Yeah, you didn't know, so
I might have heard it somewhere, the zeitgeist, but he gets the credit, and so now I give attribution to him always. Look at you, you're doing Dreamscape, or what is it?
The Dreamcatcher. The Dreamcatcher.
Exactly.
Yes. Yes.
The Dreamcatcher is so great. Like, one of the methods of becoming more aware is to practice lucid dreaming, for example. And one of the great bonuses of, even if you're not very good at it, or if you only get a little hint of it after even quite a while. Some people very quickly can do that. Some people it takes a lot of effort. Night after night, they have to remind themselves to try to wake up in the dream without waking up. So they're conscious in the dream, that they are in the dream. But even trying to do it gives you more freedom when you're awake. So you can be more lucidly awake, because you begin to more realize in the dream, if you can be lucid in the dream, that you kind of do shape even your environment in the dream. If your mood will shape how you perceive what seems to be not you. So you realize more your responsibility in the quality of your happiness or fear and suffering, or relaxation and happiness. And then you start seeing it more like you're a bit more open to, well, the way I see the world is I don't have to fixate on it. Maybe there would be another dimension to what I'm experiencing, and you get a bigger picture, and it's a marvelous thing. So in doing that, you are attentive to people who are trying to think of better things and live more happily and better. So you are absolutely a practitioner of, exchanging self-preoccupation for other preoccupation, and living more in what they want, etc. And therefore ignoring more what you admit, not focusing so much on what you need and want. Being more open, of course you still do, and you should, because you are, in a way, you tomorrow is other than you today. So you have to have compassion for yourself, of course, to really open up more and be compassionate about others. But by being more open to thinking, well, what would I want tomorrow? Then you're less focused on what I have to have right now, and that frees you. And then you're more free about it, if you follow me. So it's actually immensely practical psychologically and scientifically, and is a way of educating oneself gradually, educating one's heart gradually, since the schools, since my university did a lousy job of that. And even they're so bent on their materialist natural science that they, funding wise, they deplete the humanistic, humanities courses, and they give more, focus on the hard sciences and the social sciences, because they can get more profit by knowing that, and
Right.
that's a shame. We need new schools. I need a bliss universe, super bliss university.
Super Bliss University. Yes.
That's right.
And books like yours is,
Right?
it's the beacon of light. It's what's guiding people in that direction.
And your dream catcher, like broadcast with a relax in multicolors behind you, is really great. And
Oh, thank you. That
we'll
means
give
so
you an
much to
honorary
me.
degree from Super Bliss University, for sure.
I'm trying my, with the platform that I've been given, I'm just trying my best to spread the
I
word.
think it's great. You're sitting there in the middle of the world between India and the West, and you're sharing, and that you're enabling people who are trying to live the dream a little bit, wherever they are, and enabling them to share and resonate with others, and that's wonderful. It's a wonderful thing to do. I
Thank
have a
you.
lot of podcasts I try to do too.
Thank you so much, Robert. And I just want to thank you for all the inspiration you've given us, and, just gracing us with your light and wisdom. It's been so, so wonderful speaking with you.
Thank you. That's very kind. Really wonderful. I think I've a little bit run over on your.
No, that's fine. I just want to quickly mention to the listeners about your new book, Wisdom is Bliss, Four Friendly Facts that can change your life. It's now available in all major bookstores and on your website, bobthurman.com.
And the subtitle, I really like the subtitle, Four Friendly Fun Facts.
Yes.
That can change your life.
Yeah.
And how I learned about a fun fact? You know how I learned that? It's a fun story. I don't think I wrote it in the book, but I have a friend who is the founder of the Hasbro toy company.
Okay.
And he and I were at a dinner. We were on a board of another nonprofit together, trying to help out school children and things. And we had a dinner on the board, and to get to know each other, the sort of chair said, everyone should tell their own fun fact. And I'd never heard of a fun fact. I didn't know what that was. And then he said, okay, I'll do my fun. And I didn't know what to say. And then he did his fun fact. And his fun fact was that he's the executive chairman of the company he created, which he used to be the CEO of, right? He's elder, a little bit elder like me, younger than me, but a little bit elder. And so he said, but my fun fact is, he said, that being an executive chairman of a company is like presiding over a cemetery. There's a lot of people beneath you, but no one is listening. I really like that. So that meant that he was having fun doing other things, and he couldn't really worry about his company because it wouldn't do any good anyway. You know what I mean?
That's hilarious. So that's where
I've told that to a lot of people. Everybody roars with laughter. So obviously he was a successful toy company founder, has a good sense of humor. Alan did. Anyway,
right. And this book is, and I could see how you kind of incorporated that into this book, because it's really easy to read, and it's conversational. I found myself laughing at certain parts. Like I felt like you were talking to me, which is something I always appreciate in a book,
Thank you so much, Celine.
All right.
Celine Shenoy. I like the name. It's really wonderful.
Thank you, Robert. It's been an honor and a true pleasure speaking to you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Well, it's been my honor and my pleasure. Okay.
Thank you.
So bye. I'll come back with the next book or any other time.
Absolutely. Of course. You're always welcome.